Let me tell you a story from my childhood. The year is 2002, and the only thing young Pixel wants more than anything in life is a Game Boy Advance. You see, up until this point, the only console I'd owned was a Super Nintendo, which was great and all, but the idea of being able to take those games with me anywhere was enthralling. After months of begging and saving up my pocket money, which, in retrospect, was almost certainly not enough to actually afford a Game Boy, my parents took me to the local game station to pick up my first ever handheld console. After picking out my transparent blue Game Boy Advance, the time had come to pick my first game, which with the help of the store clerk, I'd managed to narrow down to 3 titles, those being Wario Land 4, Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure, and Simpsons Night of the Living Treehouse of Horror. It's no secret which one I picked. You read the title of this video. Young me was silly enough to pick the one game from that selection which was for Game Boy Color instead of Game Boy Advance. But I had zero buyer's remorse. I excitedly took my new tech home, plugged in a pair of AA batteries, popped in that chunky Game Boy Color cartridge, and had a jolly old time. For all 3 of you not familiar with The Simpsons, Treehouse of Horror is the name of a series of special anthology episodes which broadcast over Halloween. They're not considered canon, and they place The Simpsons into a bunch of various what-if scenarios featuring the supernatural and gory, and Night of the Living Treehouse of Horror is basically one of those specials in video game form. The game is composed of 6 missions, most of which make some sort of reference to an existing Treehouse of Horror story, which themselves are usually pop culture references. In each of the 6 missions, you take control of a different member of the Simpsons family, and despite most of the levels being structured as a 2D platformer, the gameplay varies wildly between stages, at one point even turning into a top-down shooter featuring Marge Simpson of all characters. This game is definitely a game of its time. The controls are stiff, and the objectives are oftentimes unclear, but that's not to say a whole lot of love wasn't put into this game. Even with the restrictions of the Game Boy Color, this game is still very distinctly Simpsons, with the artist doing an exceptionally good job of representing various Simpsons characters despite the limited color palette and resolution. While the music and sound design isn't much to write home about, it's also very distinctly Simpsons. The game's music normally contains a Simpsons motif, and the sound effects are usually very cartoonish, at least as cartoonish as you could get with the Game Boy Color sound chip. Despite its flaws, this game sits as a core memory in my childhood, and while I would move on to more games which were better in almost every sense, this game sticks in the back of my mind as one of those beloved childhood games that, even if, in retrospect, wasn't the masterpiece my young self remembered, begs the question, isn't it more important I just enjoyed it? The reason I chose to talk about this game now is because it's Halloween, and every Halloween I find myself wanting to stream this game to let my audience in on a small piece of my childhood. But I think it would be more self-indulgent than entertaining for me to stream it. So instead, I thought I'd take a few minutes of your time to talk about my memories of this game. And who knows, maybe somebody watching this video will have memories of this game to share as well. Or maybe not. Happy Halloween, everyone, and have a great night.